We're here with Lori Lorenz, who is one of the speakers at the Architects of the New Paradigm Conference in Petaluma, California at the Institute of Noetic Sciences on Saturday, October 24th, 2015. Lori is joining us here to give a brief overview of the topics that she'll be presenting. Lori is a 20-plus year practicing counselor for people subjected to childhood sexual abuse, torture, and mind control conditioning in the MK Ultra and Monarch styles. Her presentation is a starting point to understanding exactly what psychopathy is and how it impacts us in daily life. The title of Lori's presentation at the ANP conference this Saturday is Psychopaths, Mind Control, and Our Brains, and I'm glad to be speaking with you here today, Lori. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks so much, Jordan, and for having me here. I'm delighted to share more about this topic.
It seems like there's a lot of misunderstanding about the subject of psychopathy and how much we're all affected by it. Can you unpack the subject a little for us and tell us about your perspectives on why it's an important area of study?
Oh, happy to. Yes, there's a great deal of misunderstanding about psychopaths. Or maybe it's better to say there's not quite enough understanding about them. What's presented to us is mostly through film and TV and fiction, and that is really only a slice of how psychopaths move in the world. What we see portrayed is the serial killer and the violent criminal. What they don't show us is the psychopath who might be your neighbor, the corporate CEO, or even a government official. What we see as psychopaths is based on research, and that research is based on the ones who end up in prison. They're the ones who get caught. They're the ones who are not so effective. They don't organize or self-control themselves very well. There's a whole other world of psychopaths. This is a world of very functional, well-structured people who can be very effective in what they're doing in the corporate world, the financial world, and in politics. So in this talk, we're taking a look at who those people really are and what makes them different. Why do they want such power and dominance? So that they want it in a way that is so extreme, so much more than people seem would make sense. And it doesn't make sense. I used to think, they just must be afraid. But as I learned more about psychopaths, I realized it isn't that at all. That that they're really operating from a different place. And I discovered that their brains really are different, that they don't have or don't have well developed the parts of the brain that have to do with social connection and human caring and intimacy and empathy. That's simply not there. So you're looking at a person who looks normal, who is very good at acting normal, and in fact, for their own purposes, can mimic emotion very, very well. And one of the things that we can get tangled up in with a psychopath is that we're looking at someone who's giving us an emotion, and one of the things we look at is, are they congruent? Can we feel like they're lying in the background? Well, a psychopath has no conflict. The key thing with a psychopath is that they have no conscience, and that is part of the brain structures that are not well developed and are not connected and integrated in the brain that make them look at what they're doing and go, uh-oh, that's wrong. And when a normal person is doing something wrong like that, we can sense that internal conflict. That doesn't happen in a psychopath. So they're very good at fooling people. So that's actually pretty scary when we look at the fact that these people can be in high places, that these people who are actually very functional can work together and coordinate with a common agenda. And that's what we're seeing in the mind control and influencing the masses that we're talking about in this conference. And so what I'll be talking about is how do we get to understand really what they're doing? There is a kind of disconnect and coldness in them that is unnerving. It's really the hardest part to get in all of this. And I've had the good fortune of working with some amazing people who have looked into the eyes of these people, of these psychopaths. And I've been allowed to see that through their eyes, to see the psychopath. And that's what I want to convey in here, who these people really are, and that their agenda is so profoundly different than most people's, that if we want to make a change in this world, we've got to know what we're dealing with. That's the key element of this presentation, and I hope to be able to convey that well and the impact of it in a way that helps empower us, helps us all have a sense of, oh, this is actually what's happening. I don't have to be confused about it. This is actually what's happening, and this is what I can do about it.
Wow, great summary, Lori. Who will this conference appeal to, and why should they attend, do you think?
I think anyone who's wondering about what's going on in the world and why it's going down such a black hole needs to attend this conference. I believe, and you've said the same thing, Jordan, that this is the missing piece. Understanding psychopaths gives us a whole different window into what's happening. And if you want to know the underpinnings, if you want to make sense of what these seemingly crazy and disconnected things are and how they tie together and how they make sense, then come to this conference. These are the missing pieces. This is what ties it together, and it's a whole change in perspective. That actually, when we can see how things make sense, even if they're horrible, we can see it, and our whole nervous system can relax, and then we can actually understand what the news is saying, and we can say, oh, well, if that's happened, that's probably going to be the next step, and then we're not taken aback, we're not taken by surprise. So it's really valuable for everyone to get this perspective.
I certainly agree with you, Lori, and we're really glad to have you speaking at the conference. We both encountered people that believe subjects like psychopathy and ritual abuse are much too dark and upsetting to consider, and that the best approach might be to just ignore such matters and think positively about the world. And certainly that idea has some credence, but please share your opinion on that.
Yeah, I know. This is tough material, and I sure understand not wanting to be pulled down into it, but if we're not aware of it, then we get pulled into it without even realizing it. It can trip us up and cause even more problems, and then we wonder what's happened. So, yes, there are those who feel that if we look at this, it becomes more real or worse, or that it's too upsetting. And for people who are, maybe doing their own trauma work, and that this isn't the time to be looking at the bigger picture of it, then this really might not be for them. But for most of us, in my years of my personal work and my work with clients, I've found over and over that when we don't understand what's happening and it's affecting us in all kinds of ways, between the upsetting news and the financial stress and what's happening with the economy, what's happening with young people, what's happening with education and politics, that's the most scary part, when we can't make sense of the world. That our nervous system is designed to go into alert, and it keeps us in a state of anxiety. And when we're in the dark, we can't see what's there. We're stumbling around into all sorts of things. It would be so much easier to move around or shift things if we could only turn the lights on. So this piece of getting to know what's happening actually has an effect on our own brains, a very real and understandable effect. And that's one of the pieces I'll be talking about too, is how our brain processes this information and how we can help our own brain stay calm and stay clear-headed and understand what's happening.
Yes, and I know you have a really unusual and unique perspective on these subjects in your counseling practice. Can you tell us a little bit more about that and what qualifies you as an expert on these subjects, please?
Yeah, yes. Well, in college, I was raised on biology, and I started out as a biology major, and then I switched to psychology, which I found was my love. And I graduated from UCLA in psychology with an emphasis in physiological psychology. But during that time, I worked with my then husband in research, first at Caltech and then at UCLA's Brain Research Institute. And we were looking at the effects of stress on the developing brain. This was cutting-edge work. And what we found was jaw-dropping. Depending upon when the stress occurred during the development of the brain, you could end up, and we worked with rats, you could end up with these huge Norwegian rats that were so mellow, you could roll them around in your hands. And these were not pets. These were not tame rats. Or if they were stressed at a different time, then if you leaned up against the cage, they'd try and tear the flesh off you. The difference between them just for when they were stressed was phenomenal. We'd sit up at night talking about the implications of this research. And as far as I can tell, that research has disappeared. It makes me wonder where it went. So then I had my time in the corporate world. I was a mom. And then I went back to school for my master's degree in clinical psychology at Antioch University. And I'd done my own personal work around sexual abuse, and I was ready to go into that work. So I dove in at a clinic that specialized in incestuous families. And I worked with children, the moms, adults who'd been molested as children, and the pedophiles. And that was a full range from regressed pedophiles to full-blown psychopaths, and most of them court-ordered. And that was an eye-opener. It was a powerful experience. And it was there that I began to encounter a different kind of abuse. It wasn't talked about. And it was relating such a sophistication and organization and intent in the abuse. It was hard to believe. It was hard to let in that this was actually happening. Were these people psychotic or making this up? But they were so credible and consistent in their accounts, I had to let it in. And I started reading and digging and discovering that this stuff is real, that there really is ritual abuse, there is satanic ritual abuse, there is mind control. And over the years, more people found me, and more people related the stories. I found more material on it as it became more available. And I discovered that this is real, that I was working with people who had been conditioned, programmed, tortured in a very progressive manner in this MK Ultra, possibly even Monarch fashion. I pretty much learned from the ground up how these organizations functioned, who were the head people in it, how they controlled the other people in a group, how they kept silence, the layers of programming, how to help a person both discover that without being triggered to hurt themselves, how to come out of that and for them to gain the bigger picture of it and to heal. And I found that these were amazing people who could come out of this and bring something to the world that has just opened my heart to work with them. But they also taught me that there's another side to this world, to what's happening out there. And out of that came what I call the map. It's an understanding of the healing process with its phases and levels. And I started teaching that to practitioners and their clients, because I think everyone should know that, including people in their own journey. And it became so apparent that this was a window. What I was seeing with these people was a window into the real world of programs like MK Ultra. Who was running that? It's like I got to see up the line through the eyes of my clients into who these people really were. And it changed me. It was hard. It had to go in stages. I couldn't take it all at once. But it's a perspective now that I see we need to get. It is really important to share this. So I was really excited to be able to speak at this conference and share some of these realities in a way that's empowering, that we can do something with this.
It's a really powerful, like you say, and rare and valuable insight that you are going to share with us, Lori. So thanks for being up for the challenge. As we've both been preparing for this and talking with other people, I was struck on a few occasions by people who were concerned that approaching people afflicted with psychopathy and identifying them and shunning them might be regarded as insensitive. What's your opinion about that?
I can understand that. For those who actually have intact compassion and caring, we don't want to become like them. We don't want to be someone who is just getting into the fight and becoming more and more like the very people that we want to change, that we want to not have affect us. But compassion also, to my sense of it, doesn't mean that we pretend that something is not what it is. An example would be you've got a bunny rabbit and you've got a rattlesnake, and they're both real, viable, natural creatures. But if you don't pay attention to the difference between them, you're going to have a problem. You go petting a rattlesnake the way you would a bunny rabbit, and you're likely to have a shortened life. We need to be aware. My sense of compassion is that it includes awareness, having our eyes open, staying in our hearts and centers. And if someone is doing harm to another, there comes a time for action to stop that harm, to contain the one who harms. That is sometimes the greater compassion. So I would propose in this case that we become very aware, that we see where we're being pressured to give up ourselves to the psychopath's agenda, and that we say no to that. And that with that awareness, we choose a different path, that we don't feed their plan. And where possible, we hold them accountable through the courts, through legal means. But mostly, we develop a social structure that's human, it's humane, it's real, it's honest, where we can live and they can live also, providing they don't harm. There are cultures where psychopaths are not as damaging as they are in the industrialized world. We have a lot to learn from those cultures that hold a structure for their psychopaths. And they're aware of that psychopathy, and they hold a container for it.
Boy, those are some really good points, Lori. Is there anything else you'd like to add before we close today?
Yeah, I guess I'm repeating myself to a certain degree here, but I just want to add how important this understanding is to how we want to change our future. The whole Architects of the New Paradigm Conference series is about a new paradigm, about transforming this old mechanical, fear-based structure into something more alive and expressive and real. And this first conference here is to lay the foundation for that, is to inform and empower and to set the stage. And so that when we're looking at where we want to go, we know what it is we're wanting to change, how we can meet it, that we can see it clearly, and we don't have, either not ignorance, not knowing, or fear of naming it get in our way, that we can actually say, that's what's here, this is what we want to move toward. And this next conference in January is really going to focus on that. And this opportunity is one to say, oh, I really see what's going on, and this is what we want to change. So thank you for giving me a chance to speak to that.
Thank you, Lori. Lori will be joining Fred Burks and Jeff Warwick speaking at the Architects of the New Paradigm Conference in Petaluma, California at the Institute of Noetic Sciences on Saturday, October 24th, 2015. Advance tickets are still available for only $45, They're easy to buy directly from the website, anpconference.com, and there's an option there for having dinner with all the speakers after the event. Also on that website, you can read about the next ANP conference in San Rafael, California, January 16th and 17th, with Joel Garvin, Richard Dolan, Foster and Kimberly Gamble, Daniel Sheehan, and Catherine Austin Fitz. Again, get your tickets now and save at least $15 by going to anpconference.com.